Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you're doing well. So this is an important video. It's about the fourth task in your mock exam, and you will have a similar task in your mid-semester exam as well. So it is important that you know how to do this. So this task is about creating a static route, okay? And if you've watched the video and listened in class about static routing, you know that we take the network that we're trying to identify, the same subnet mask, and we figure out which IP address or exit interface we need to use. In this case, we need to create a static default route that should point to the ISP router. So this is the packet tracer activity for the mock exam. And in this, we have two routers. The first one is called Bahrain, and the second one is called ISP. We need to create a static route that can point to basically this network, okay, or this router. So I would go to the Bahrain router first, and I will write enable config t, and here I will first of all, actually, let me show you the routing table. So show IP route will show you the routing table. It will show you all the networks that are already connected to, or they're identifiable by this router. So this router knows, this router knows about the network .32, .64, .193, and then this particular network here, and that's because of all of these connections here. Okay, so what we're supposed to do is we need to create a static default route that can point to this particular network here that is connected to the ISP. So the first thing I would do is configure terminal, and then I will write IP route. Now it says default static or static default route. That means you need to just write 0, 0, 0, 0 for the network, and then 0, 0, 0, 0 for the subnet mask. And then if we've done this in class, I told you to write this particular, what's it called, IP address. But that's incorrect. If you write it, it will still show as the correct answer, but that's not the correct way of doing it. The next thing that we write here is basically either the IP address of the next router or the next hop, or it's the exit interface of this particular router. In the question, it says we are not supposed to use the IP address of the ISP router in our configuration. So we're not allowed to use any of the IP addresses from the second router, which is the ISP router. So what we will do is we'll take the exit interface in that case. I will click here and I will check what is the interface here. If I hover over the green triangle, it shows me it is serial 3/0. Okay, so that's what I will write here, S3/0. That's my route. Now, if I go back and write show IP route, you will be able to see this. This particular route is default static route. You will see a star here that stands for default. So if you see here, the star here means candidate default. If it was just S, it would mean it is a static route, which will have a default network, which will have a network added to it. So that's the first part. I mean, if you do until here, it will still give you the mark. If I go back to the completion, check results, assessment items, it shows that I have created the static route correctly, and that's like I get the point for the route, setting the static route. But if you try to ping, which is mentioned here, just give me a minute, which is mentioned here, you can test static route configuration by pinging 8.8.8.8 from any host inside your network. So in this network, let's say I will pick PC0 and it has the IP configuration done on it. If I can go to the command prompt, if right now I write ping 8.8.8.8, which is the question, it will not work. And we'll see why it's not working. It will either say destination host unreachable, or it will time out. Okay. Now, how can we fix this? The problem here is that this router knows about this router or the networks on this router, but this router doesn't know anything about these networks here. This router, Bahrain, has three networks. If you notice, it's connected to three different sub networks, and the ISP doesn't know about any of those. So what we are supposed to do is we should go to the ISP router and write enable config t, and then we should check. Okay, let's just check before. So show IP route. This router knows about 8.8.8, which is its loopback interface, and the next one is 209.105, which is the serial interface. It's here, serial interface. We need to let this router know about these three networks here so that the PCs from this network can communicate to the ISP router. So for that, we will do the same thing, config t, and then IP route. Now, the thing is, how do you figure out the network addresses? Because the first thing you need to write is the network address, and we're not given any network address. One trick is that you can go to the Bahrain router and just write the show IP route command, and it will show you all the networks that it is connected to. These are basically the network IP addresses. So I can just use these one by one. I can say 10.10.10.32. And if you look at the table here, the one that they gave you, 32 basically belongs to this particular, like this is the closest number, that is 232, and the subnet mask for this is 224. So I will copy that, 255, 255, 255, 224, and the host, sorry, not the host, and the exit interface for this one is basically serial 030. Okay, sometimes they will ask you to put the IP address. In that case, you have to figure out the IP address of the next device that's connected to it. If they say use exit interface, then you need to figure out the interface on the particular router that you're configuring. Okay, so this is the router that I'm configuring, and it is connected using the interface serial 030. So that's what I would write here, S030. Okay, now if I go back and I ping, it should work. Oh, no, sorry. This belongs to a different network. It will still not work because this PC doesn't belong to the network .32. It is this PC that belongs to the network .32. If you take a look here, and if I go back and ping from here, it should work. Okay, and now we can see it's pinging, but the other networks are still not discoverable. So we need to add them as well. So I will keep both the routers open, and I will just make sure that I'm writing it correctly. So the same IP route, but with different network address. This time I will pick 64 because that's the second network that's connected. And then the last one will be 192. Okay. Now this PC should be able to ping as well, which it is. So it's working now. Let's say you make a mistake at writing any of the IP routes in your configurations. You just copy the same command and just write no in the beginning. That will remove the IP route. Okay, so this will remove it. And then if you take a look here again, it will not work this time because I've removed the network from there, from the routing table. So if you want to add it back, just remove the no and add it back. So that's how you would do the static route. You need to put the default static route here because that's what they've asked for. And then you need to also set the networks on the other, or you need to also create the static routes on the other router as well. And after that, you'll be able to ping between the devices and the IP address that they provide. That's the first thing that I want you to know. I will save all of this, and I want to show you the next thing that I want to show you is basically um, the telnet. Okay, so let's say you have here, actually I can show it to you in the previous one. It's better because everything is configured, otherwise it will take me time to configure everything. So now here, let's say you have a server here, not a server, sorry, you have a router here, okay? And if you remember, we have something called virtual terminal lines, VTY. So if you configure, these lines basically allow you to connect to the device remotely so you can configure it, okay? But you don't want that access, that remote access to be without any, let's say, any authentication. Like you need to have a password that the user enters, only then they can access the device, and then they can, change the configurations. So if you remember, we had it's something like this, line VTY 05. Now it can be from 05. Previously, the devices only had five. Not sorry, not 0 to 5. It is 0 to 4. Previously, all the Cisco devices had five virtual terminal lines, but from what I know now, the the devices now have up to 15 lines as well. You can choose either one. So I'll pick. Uh, so previously they had five. Now they have 0 to 15, which is 16 lines. Okay, so line 0 to 5, and I will set a password Cisco there. Login, exit. Now, what I can do here is this PC here is connected to, the first thing I would do is I would go to the IP configuration. I will pick the default gateway, copy it, and go to the command prompt and write telnet and just paste. So the word telnet and the default gateway. Press enter and see it asks for the password, which was Cisco. Now I can configure the router from here also. No password set. So that's how you would do it. You would put a password on the virtual terminal lines, and then you will try to connect from the PC to the router using the default gateway address. And it will ask you for the password, and that's how you would be able to communicate with the device. One thing that is helpful is that if you're in the telnet session and you want to end it, you can press Control and this square bracket, it will end it. So it's basically the Control key and the square bracket on your keyboard.